select for dinner. It's something that really is best left to rot down for quite a while before you use it. All right. You also don't want your birds digging holes for dust baths in the beds, as we talked about before. They will dig a hole somewhere and take that dust bath, especially in the heat of the summer. But you can kind of channel that. We had a sandbox for a while until the dogs ate it. And that was a really good place for them to have a dust bath because it was contained and nobody was going to plant anything there. It was their territory. Now they have sort of claimed the spot up next to the foundation of the house on the shady side. And that's fine. Nothing was going to grow there, you know. But I would say find a spot in your yard that you're not just absolutely in love with and let the birds have it. Because in the summer especially, they really need that. And they will dig a deep hole. It's not something you can fill in and go on. They will make it their own, like a tiny buffalo wallow. Let's see. You can encourage the chickens to fertilize areas that you're sheet composting. If you're not doing compost piles and you're just sheet composting specific areas that you're preparing for planting, by just tossing food and table scraps out there, and they will go, they will turn everything, they will be hunting for food, they'll find bugs in that sheet compost, and they will fertilize while they're there. I am using them to sheet compost bed up near the back of our house, and it's honestly going much better than I thought it was. I was afraid at first that they would kick everything out, and that would be the end of it, and I would end up with a hole. But they have done a really good job of just keeping it nice. They're light enough that they're not going to stomp it and compact everything that's in there. And they are pouring a lot of nitrogen to it, which is nice. I've also found that in areas, we're on clay over bedrock where we are. And so I'm finding that I have a lot of areas of very hard-packed clay, especially where the dogs and kids have been. And I'm finding that if I take a handful of seed out there, or especially something really fine that they have to work for more than layer pellets, like millet, or an extra handful of the seed that we give the parakeets, something real small and tasty and motivating, and toss it out there on that hard-packed clay, but they will scratch it up pretty thoroughly to get the seeds. And that's not, it's not tilling. It's not gonna, it's not like taking your tiller out there. But what they will do is they will scratch up enough of the soil that you can start some pioneer species out there, some annuals or something that you can throw out there and get some seeds started so that the roots loosen up the soil. And then you can start rehabilitating that area and building the soil further. Let's see. Other ways that your chickens can help build your soil. Eggshells and feathers. I have read different things about whether to put eggshells in the compost if you have chickens, and I wasn't sure. I didn't do it for a long time, and then I finally decided, you know, if a chicken who's calcium deficient will eat eggshells, if it's okay in nature, it's probably okay in the compost bin. And so that's what we do. We rinse them out, put them in the compost bin. If chicken needs a calcium boost, it's right there. And if not, it breaks down into minerals for the soil. Feathers. We'll go to the next slide. There's Wanda molting this past spring. She was a very unhappy girl. It was a huge molt, and we had tons and tons of feathers that really looked like it had snowed. This is actually not the worst part of her molt. Gather up those feathers. You know, if they're just dropping one at a time, it's not worth it. But if you've got one hen or a bunch of hens that are all molting, put that stuff in the compost pile or in your sheet compost. It's keratin. It's the same stuff our feathers, our hair, and nails are made of, and it's protein. It breaks down to nitrogen, and it'll look better in your compost pile than it will dumped up in all the corners around your house where the wind will blow those feathers otherwise. Let's see. Next slide. Thank you. This is Wanda checking on me when I was cleaning the bathroom one morning. She just had to see what I was doing. Now that we've gone over the main ways chickens can work for you in the garden, I want to quickly cover a few ways to make sure your garden works for them. Those of you who are experienced chicken keepers know this already, but it's good to reiterate, and it's certainly stuff that I needed to know when I first started keeping chickens. Obviously, anything that's potentially toxic needs to be up out of reach because chickens are like toddlers who can fly. They will investigate and peck everything. They will taste test everything. Toes are popular. cameras. I've gotten my camera lens pecked more than once. If you have child-proofed or dog-proofed your garden area already, you're ahead of the game. If not, you may want to walk through with an eye to what could a chicken get in trouble with here. Two things that I hadn't really thought about before we had chickens are string and things like pieces of busted water balloons. So if your kids or you are kind of folks who like to throw strings and water balloons all over your yard, just make sure that stuff's picked up. Apparently chickens can mistake strings for worms or snakes and can hurt themselves trying to eat it. And of course nobody needs to be eating water balloon pieces, and they're colorful and can look like food. So that's a problem if you're running a circus in your backyard like I am. Let's see, and, okay, next slide. If you free range and have dogs like mine who are large, loud, and protective of your chickens, you're going to have less to worry about from feral cats and hawks during the day, although, as with anything else, there are no guarantees. We found 3 hawks circling our yard the other day, screeching to each other, and we decided that maybe this would be a good time to put the chickens back in the pen. We don't normally do that during the day, but that day we did. Our dogs do a pretty good job of running off anything else that tries to get near the chickens. But, you know, we're lucky. Most dogs bear watching with birds, especially when they're first introduced, and frankly, some dogs can never be trusted with chickens. My neighbors down the street used to have a lovely flock of about a dozen birds in their little suburban coop, and they had this dog who, I swear, several times I had thought I had stumbled across the dog and it was dead because it was laying in the street and it was just so, you know, decrepit. I think it was about 15. And, no, it was just resting. This dog that you would think could not possibly even get up on its own managed to take out her entire flock in one afternoon when she forgot to close the coop door. So, again, you know your dogs, know your chickens. Dogs can be very useful or they can be very destructive. It's going to depend on the dogs and the chickens. And of course, even free-range birds should be penned at night. There's just too many predators, too many smart, highly skilled predators that are out at night, from feral cats, raccoons, possums, owls, teenagers, anything that can be out there to mess with your chickens. And I wouldn't rely on the dogs at night. Obviously, you need a sturdy fence to keep those wild and neighborhood animals out and to keep your birds in. This is probably old news to anybody who's had chickens for any length of time, but I had to learn it the hard way. Even if you think your hens are so big that they can't possibly fly over your fence, clip the wings. Clip the wings. And then check periodically to see if those feathers have molted and grown back in. If they have, clip the wings again. This particular lesson cost me $150 at the vet after Wanda decided to fly over and meet the neighbor's golden retriever. She's still with us only because my neighbor was home and moved fast, and it turned out to only be a slight skin wound between the wings. I also learned that day that I was neither a farmer nor a rancher, but in fact a suburban pet owner. My mother told the story of me taking Wanda to the emergency vet to my rancher relatives down near Yorktown and Goliad, and they laughed so hard that it almost broke up the whole meal, the idea of taking a chicken to the vet. So that's another thing you might want to consider is where are your boundaries? What's your philosophy on that? But mostly, clip the wings. Clip the wings. Last slide. Alright, there's one more benefit to gardening with chickens besides help with bugs and weeds and soil and learning your landscape, and that is, frankly, pure enjoyment. There are evenings after work, after we're done with school, where the kids and I and my husband just sit out, or we'll invite friends over, and we will sit out there with our dessert or a coffee or whatever. We'll just watch the chickens before it gets dark in the summer. It's a relaxing thing. You can explain a lot about life to your children. My older boy, who everything has to explode or beep or make noise to hold his attention. We were sitting out there and the chickens were just doing their thing, patrolling in the grass, and he said they're not doing anything. And we explained to him, well, you know, this is what most of life is just animals and people going about their business. And there's something to that. I've also found that chickens are a really good icebreaker